The fourth commandment of the 10 Commandments is Zachar es Yom HaShabbos l'kadshoy, to remember the Shabbos and to keep the Shabbos holy. To understand this on 5 levels, the level of Pshat, Remez, Drush, Soid, and Chassidus. We start with the simple interpretation, Pshat. We begin with the question that on one hand we find in Exodus the word Zachar, which means remember the Shabbos and keep it holy. But the 10 Commandments are repeated also in the book of Deuteronomy, in the portion of Eschanon, and over there it says Shamor es Yom HaShabbos l'kadshoy, which means keep the Shabbos holy, or protect the Shabbos, or abstain on the Shabbos. So the question is, what did God actually say? Did God say Zachar, remember, or did he say abstain? And the Talmud tells us, Shamor v'Zachar b'diburecha, that God said both these words, Shamor, to keep and abstain, and the word Zachar, to remember the Shabbos at the same time. And only God can say 2 words at the same time. However, man cannot hear these 2 words at the same time. So therefore, when Moses wrote the Torah, as God dictated to Moshe, letter by letter, and word by word, and paragraph by paragraph, so God tells Moses, put Zachar in the book of Exodus and Shamor in the book of Deuteronomy. What is the literal meaning of Zachar, to remember? And what is the literal meaning of Shamor? So we're told that Shamor, to protect and to abstain, represents the fact that on Shabbos one should not violate the 39 prohibitions. In other words, on Shabbos we are forbidden to plow and to sow and to harvest and to bake and to cook and to make a fire and to build and to carry from a private domain to a public domain. These are things that one should protect and watch on the Shabbos. And then there are Zachar. Zachar, remember, says the Rambam, what does it mean to remember the Shabbos? Remember the Shabbos with words. Make Kiddush when you enter into the Shabbos. Make Havdalah when you leave the Shabbos. So that is the literal translation of Shamor and Zachar. On a deeper level, the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya in the final chapter, he says over there that the meaning of Zachar, to remember the Shabbos, means one should have kavanah b'tfilah. One should have immense meditation and concentration in his prayers and when he studies Torah. And the objective should be l'davka b'havaya echad, to cleave to the one God. That should be the main meditation and the main focus of Shabbos. And that is Zachar, to remember the Shabbos through prayer and primarily through meditating on the greatness of God. What is Shamor? To remember, to protect the Shabbos or keep the Shabbos. Says the Alter Rebbe that Shamor means that you should rest from weekday business talk. In other words, just like God rested on Shabbos, he created the world in 6 days. And he rested on Shabbos, on the 7th day. So too, we should rest from business and creation on the Shabbos day. That is the meaning of Shamor, to protect and to abstain from weekday business talk on the Shabbos. So this is the pshat. This is the simple, basic interpretation of these 2 words, of the word of Zachar, to remember the Shabbos, and Shamor, to protect the Shabbos. The Torah has at least 4 or 5 levels to every mitzvah. What is the remez, the hint of this mitzvah? So the Talmud tells us in the tractate of Avodah Zarah, Mi shetarach be'erev Shabbos yochel b'Shabbos. A person that will be preoccupied and working hard on the eve of Shabbos, he or she will eat on the Shabbos. In other words, on Shabbos, you're not allowed to bake or cook or roast. Yet Shabbos is 25 hours. So how does one eat on Shabbos? So the answer is you got to prepare for Shabbos before Shabbos. If you prepare for the Shabbos, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and especially Friday, and you make the gefilte fish, and you make the delicious chicken soup, and the kugel, and the potato kugel, and the lokshen kugel, and the Yerushalmi kugel, and the roast beef, and the roast chicken, and all the delicious delicacies, and ice cream, and chocolate cake for dessert, then Yechol b'Shabbos. Then you can eat very, very royal on the Shabbos. This is the basic halacha. What is the remez? What is the hint? Our rabbis tell us that this is hinting to the world to come. For Shabbos is a remez. Shabbos is a hint, an allusion to the day Yom Shekuloi Shabbos Amnucha. The day, the long day, the everlasting day of peace and tranquility and rest, when the world will be in a state of tranquility, when there will be no war, there will be no anger, there will be no jealousy, no strife. So this long day of Shabbos represents the Messianic era. How does one get to the Messianic era? How does one live the Messianic era? Tells the Talmud that if you're going to work for 6 days, and that is through the 6 millennia of creation, because God created the world in 6 days, which also alludes to 6 millennia. In other words, Sunday alludes to the first 1,000 years. From the year 0 to the year 1,000 is Sunday. Monday is from the year 1000 to 2000. And Friday is the year 5,000 to 6,000. So now we are 5,773 on the Jewish calendar. In other words, we are Friday afternoon on the universal clock. And therefore, Friday afternoon on the universal clock, just like Friday afternoon on the normal clock, when you come into the house, already you smell the aroma of the gefilte fish, you already smell the aroma of the chicken soup, already you smell the aroma of all the delicious foods for Shabbos. Already now we begin to smell the aroma of the Messianic era. But how do you eat the food of the Messianic era? How do you eat this delicious gefilte fish and this delicious chicken soup? Misha Torach. You have to work and be preoccupied now and to prepare for this special day. How do we do this? By adding and increasing in the study of Torah and the performance of mitzvos, doing good deeds, helping one the other, increasing in our meditation and concentration through prayer, simply becoming a mensch, a better human being. And by doing these things, we are preparing for the day of Shabbos. That is the remez. This is the hint of the mitzvah of Shabbos. What is drush? The homiletics. So we find that Ramban Nachmanides tells us, and he quotes from the Mechilta, that Rabbi Elazar ben Chananya said, Tehei Zoichrei be'echad b'Shabbos. Already, on the first day of the week, on Sunday, we should already remember Shabbos. In other words, what does it mean, remember the Shabbos? When should I remember it? I should remember it all week long. Starting from Sunday already, I should remember the Shabbos. How do I remember the Shabbos on Sunday? So he quotes that Shammai Azokin, Shammai, the famous rabbi, the rabbi of the Mishnah, the famous Shammai, would say like this: on Sunday, he would walk out into the field, and he found a cow. Wow, this is a beautiful cow, he said. I'm going to keep this cow for Shabbos. Monday, he went out into the field, and he found a nicer cow. He says, wow, this cow is even nicer. This cow I'm going to prepare for Shabbos. And the one that I found on Sunday, I'm going to eat today. Tuesday, he went into the field, he found a more beautiful cow. He said, this is the cow I'm going to keep for Shabbos. The cow from yesterday, I'll eat today. Thursday, he found even a more beautiful cow. On Friday, even a more beautiful cow. So every day he would say, this is L'Kovit Shabbos. Oh, this is for the Shabbos. This is for the Shabbos. This is for the Shabbos. All week long, already Sunday morning, he found a nice piece of gefilte fish. Oh, this is for Shabbos. A nice bottle of wine. Oh, this is for Shabbos. Oh, a nice bottle of scotch. Oh, this is for Shabbos. So that's the way you remember Shabbos all week long. You find a nice tie. Oh, this I'm going to wear Shabbos. A nice pair of shoes. Oh, this I'm going to wear on Shabbos. So all week long, whatever you see, whatever you come in contact with, already you're remembering the Shabbos by saying this is fit for the day of Shabbos. There's another opinion in the Mechilta, and that is of Rabbi Yitzchok. Rabbi Yitzchok says, how do you remember the Shabbos? How do you remember the Shabbos all week long? Tehei moina l'shem Shabbos. You should count every day up to Shabbos. Sunday, what do you say? Today is Hayoim Echad b'Shabbos. Today is the first day leading up to Shabbos. And Monday, you say today is the second day of the week leading up to Shabbos. And Tuesday, today is the third day of the week leading up to Shabbos. So every day you're living with Shabbos. Every day you're thinking about the Shabbos. And this is brought down in Halacha. The Alter Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch, in Siman Reish Mem Beis, chapter 242. He says over there, Darshu ben Beis Shammai, that the house of Shammai would darshan, homiletically, they learnt the phrase of remember the Shabbos by the fact that everything he saw throughout the week, he would say, aha, tehei zoi l'chavid Shabbos, this shall be for the Shabbos. So this is the drush. This is the way we understand this passage homiletically. What is the soid? What is the secret, the esoteric approach to these two words of remember the Shabbos and protect the Shabbos? One approach is as follows. In Sefer HaBohir from Rabbi Nechunya ben Akona, he says like this. It's also brought down in the Ramban. Shamor and Zachar, two phrases, two phraseologies connected with the Fourth Commandment. These two phrases represent two specific time zones within the day of Shabbos. Shamor, to abstain from work. This is at night. Friday night, we enter into the zone of the Shamor zone. We protect the Shabbos. We abstain from work. Zachar, remember the Shabbos. This is the day zone. When we enter into the day of Shabbos, Saturday, this is the concept of Zachar. Now what does this mean? We'll soon explain it. But first, to move on to the fifth level. And that is the level of Chassidus. What is the Chassidic insight to the meaning of Shabbos? We understand this with a story. There was a min, a heretic, that approached the famous Rabbi Akiva. And he says, Rabbi Akiva, I have a question to ask you. Tell me, is it not true that your God really respects the Shabbos? So if it's true as you say that your God respects the Shabbos, how is it that on the Shabbos God Almighty blows the winds and allows the winds to blow? And how is it that on the Shabbos He allows the rain to flow? And how is it on the Shabbos He allows the grass to grow? And to this, Rabbi Akiva responded. He said, very simple. On the Shabbos, we have a prohibition. And that is, on Shabbos, you are not allowed to carry an object from a private domain to a public domain. But in the private domain, you are allowed to carry. You can carry a siddur, a chumash. You can carry a bottle of wine. You can carry a plate of gefilte fish. In a private domain, you have the right to move things around. But you cannot take a plate of gefilte fish from the private domain and move it to a public domain on the Shabbos. Unless, of course, there's an eiduv, which makes the entire community or the entire city into a private domain. So says Rabbi Akiva, that you should know that the whole world is God's private domain. And therefore, God could do what he wants on Shabbos. Now, if you think deeply into the story, Rabbi Akiva did not answer the question. The heretic asks a question about why does God make it rain, or the wind blow, or the grass grow? And Rabbi Akiva comes along and says, you know, on Shabbos, you're not allowed to carry from the private domain into the public domain. But really, Rabbi Akiva was not answering the question, but rather the person. Rabbi Akiva was answering a deeper question, and that is, what is the essence of Shabbos? The essence of Shabbos is, as we say in the Ten Commandments, remember the Shabbos, keep the Shabbos holy, for Shabbos is Shabbos LaHashem. Shabbos is a day for God alone. On the day of Shabbos, we are to affix our mind and our heart on God. That is the objective of Shabbos. As the Sefer HaChinuch writes, that on Shabbos, a person is to affirm and affix into our minds and into our hearts the faith that God is truly the creator of the universe, and that God created the world in the 6 days of creation, and God continues to create the world now every moment anew ex nihilo. For the entire world is his. That is Shabbos. Shabbos LaHashem. And because of this, Rabbi Akiva is teaching us that even though the world, and the word world in Hebrew is olam, olam in Hebrew means concealment. The world is a concealment on God, and therefore one may think that there are really two domains. There's a private domain and a public domain. A private domain alludes to God, to goodness, to kindness, to holiness, to spirituality. And then there's the public domain, which is chaos, and people do what they want, and evil rules and runs wild. And there are these two separate domains. Comes along Shabbos and says, you should know that there's only one master to the universe, and there's only one domain. We can only carry in one domain. We don't carry from a private domain to a public domain. You know why? Because on Shabbos we emphasize the concept of the private domain, that there's only one domain to the one creator in the universe. And you know something, says Rabbi Akiva? In truth, the entire world, even the public domain, is also his private domain. It's Shabbos LaHashem. It's a day for God, that we acknowledge and we affirm and we affix that God is truly the master of the entire universe. And because of this, we start off the Shabbos with Shamor. What is Shamor? We cease working. We abstain from working. Because we relinquish our power over nature. Throughout the week, we think it's our ingenuity, our smart, our fast, quick mind that acquires all the wealth. Comes along Shabbos and we say Shabbos LaHashem. It's a Shabbos unto God. It's a private domain. There is no other power in the universe outside of God. The entire world is his. After we abstain from work and we do not violate any of the 39 prohibitions, we continue to ascend on this ladder. And from Shamor, we go to Zachar. We begin to remember the Shabbos. We become closer to God by meditating on the greatness of God, through verbalizing this in prayer and in Torah study. And so now we have the quality of remembering the Shabbos, of Zachar, which is the positive. And then Shabbos afternoon, which is called Raivin de Raivin, the secret of the secret and the deepest of the deep. We have the ability to unite these two names together, Shamor v'Zachar b'dibur echa, to bring it together as one, as God himself said it. We ascend to a level that is truly transcendental, a level that is beyond time and space, that not only one domain, but even two domains become one domain. That there's only one God, only one Master, that is in the world that is infinite, and also in the finite world. And God has the ability to unite both of these worlds together. And this was the answer of Rabbi Kiva to this heretic. Kol ha'olam shaloi, the entire world is his private domain, and therefore he can do as he sees fit. One modern story. They tell a story that there was a young girl by the name of Rose, and she was from Poland, and her parents decided it was time to send her to the States because there was no future in Poland, there was no money in Poland. But if this young girl who had a bright future would go to a new country, a new land, this young girl Rose would truly rise and make it big. And so the father hugs his daughter and tells her, Rose, before you go, I want to tell you I love you, and I will always be with you. Remember, there's a God, and God protects you, and God is always watching over you. And therefore, keep the Torah and the mitzvos. Don't forget your heritage. But most importantly, Rose, I want you to promise me that you're going to keep the Shabbos holy. I want you to promise me that you're going to abstain from doing work on the Shabbos. I want you to promise me that you'll remember the Shabbos and keep it holy. For more than the Jews have kept the Shabbos, Shabbos has kept the Jews. And as Rose is in the arms of her father, and she hears these words penetrate deep into her heart. And so they finally separate, and she goes onto the boat and comes to the shores of America. And there her family is waiting, and they greet her, and they bring her into the new world and teach her the new culture that she's about to embrace. But whatever she does, though perhaps she might cut her hair short, but she never forgets to keep the Shabbos. She has a new job, the family set her up, and she's doing very well. She's a smart girl, she's sharp, she's quick, and really picking up the new culture and the new job very, very fast. However, when Shabbos comes, she doesn't show up. The boss tells her, Rose, where were you yesterday? Oh, I had a stomach ache. I couldn't come to work. A stomach ache, okay, fine. Make sure you don't have a stomach ache next weekend. Oh, don't worry, I'll be better. Next Shabbos, again, she doesn't show up. Rose, where are you? I had a toothache. A toothache, okay. The next weekend, where are you, Rose? I had a headache. The boss calls up the family and says to the family, look, Rose was not here the last 3 Saturdays. If she does not show up the next Saturday, I'm going to have to fire her. Even though she's a great worker and she's very quick. But the rules are the rules, and she has to be here on the Saturday. The family tells her, Rose, you know, it's not Europe, it's not Poland. It's a different country, and you have to follow the laws and the rules and regulations of the American people. If you want to survive here and make it big, you got to do what the Americans do. And therefore, Rose, You have to go to work Shabbos. Rose is under a lot of pressure. She doesn't know what to do. And the family makes for her a nice, delicious cholent sandwich Saturday morning and puts it into the bag next to a nice piece of gefilte fish, a chrein, and says, Rose, now you got to go to work. Rose takes the bag and she walks out of the apartment. She leaves the bag by the door. She doesn't want to carry on the Shabbos. And she walks into Times Square and she watches the pigeons. And all day she's standing there and saying the few words of prayer that she knows by heart, but she's not going to work. She doesn't have the heart and the strength to tell her family, I'm not going to work, it's Shabbos. And after she stands all day and sings Shabbos songs like Shalom Aleichem and other such beautiful lidlach, finally she sees how the 3 stars appear. And she knows that the Shabbos is over. She now starts walking home to her home. And as she's walking back to her house, she sees Cousin Joe. Cousin Joe is outside. And Cousin says, Rose, Rose, what happened to you? How are you? I mean, where were you? And Rose, Joe, I'm sorry. I couldn't go to work. I'm so sorry. He says, what do you mean you couldn't go to work? Don't you know what happened? He says, no, what happened? Today, there was a very, very big fire. Only 40 people survived. 190 of the workers died. How? How is it that you survived? And so Rose told the story that she did not go to work. And this was the infamous fire of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. The fire that took place on Saturday, March 25th, 1911, that took the lives of 146 people. And Rose Goldberg survived this fire because more than the Jews have kept the Shabbos have kept the Jews. We hope and pray that through keeping Shabbos and remembering the Shabbos, that the Shabbos will keep us, and very soon we will see this day of Yom Shekulei Shabbos Amnucha, the eternal Shabbos, the Shabbos of peace and tranquility, with the coming of Mashiach, B'mheira B'Yameinu. Amen.
Amen.